有朋来访不亦乐乎，今天的客人是谁呢？观众朋友大家好，我是 Ann， 欢迎收看谁来做客。在大学如何选课、选社团还有打工呢？什么是在大学里面做过最对还有一点后悔的事呢？时间管理又应该如何呢？今天我们节目很荣幸再次为您邀请到3位大学生 Benjamin Sun、Allison Su 还有 Ariana Su 来到我们节目当中做客。如果喜欢我们节目的话，记得按下小铃铛键订阅，就可以及时收到最新的节目哦。今天我们开心3位大学生来我们节目当中做客，欢迎你们！节目的一开始，是不是先请你们介绍一下你们的名字，现在念大几，在哪个学校，还有学什么专业？我们从 Benny 先开始好啦。
Hi, my name is Benny. I am a senior at NYU studying media culture and communication.
谢谢 Benny。Allison，
Hi everyone, my name is Allison. I am a third year cognitive science, data science, and sociology student at UC Berkeley.
谢谢 Allison。Ariana，
I'm Ariana, and I'm a sophomore at Cornell University studying information science.
这次我想请教你们更多关于大学生活，像大家应该都还蛮关心的吧？你们如何选课？在大学选课是不是一门大学问？Allison 想
Uh,
先说吗？
yeah, I can take this one. So, course selection at Berkeley is like notoriously awful. You hear all these horror. I know last time you asked us about like roommate horror stories, and I didn't have too many, but there are many, many course schedule horror stories. The way that they do it is you are assigned a time slot, and then you just kind of build a schedule and just like fire it off and pray that you get the ones that you want. But frankly, most of the time you do not. And what I found is that this is actually not too big of an issue. What typically happens is you get your major program, you kind of line up the courses that you want, as you do at most universities, but especially freshman and sophomore year. Coming into college as a Bay Area high school student, you have your community college courses, your AP courses, and that usually offers you a little bit of flexibility in your schedule. And I think, although this may not be the most technical answer, the first, I'd say, 1.5 years of your college career should be really spent focusing on what you don't want to do. Like every semester, I would take, 2 or 3 classes for my major, and then the other class I would just take purely for fun. I took a class called Globalization and Development that had nothing to do with my cognitive science or data science coursework, but that class was so, incredibly interesting to me that I decided to pick up the sociology double major. Whereas I also took economics one, because a lot of people at UC Berkeley think about applying into Haas, the business school, and I just completely found it so disinteresting. And from then I kind of knew that like I didn't want to go into business. And that was like a very definitive way for me to like kind of sort through everything and figure out what it is that I cared about, what I didn't care about, what I want to put time towards, and what I didn't. I'm very fortunate to go to a school where you can, change your major pathway, add a minor pretty easily. And so what I would say is if you have the credits to do it, if you have the schedule flexibility to do it, definitely, definitely try to take advantage of just like taking a course that you would find fun. Most of the times you're also, not only are you paying for your degree, you're also paying for your university. And I knew that at Berkeley, the sociology program was very, very excellent. There's a lot of history at Berkeley. There's professors at Berkeley who, are experts in their field, as they are in every university. And even besides your major coursework, if you have interest in just learning from someone who is in the top of their field, the top of their industry about any topic, college is the time to do it. And in my experience, I have never regretted it. I am on time to graduate, on track. And so that's the advice that I would give. It's kind of willy-nilly, but I feel like it's worked out very well.
非常非常好。Benny 呢，选课上有什么建议？
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, broadly, that more than anything, course selection is a thing that is super specific to not only your school, but your major and all of these factors. So I would definitely suggest seeking out maybe more specific boutique information regarding your classes, your courses, your school, and your subject. But for me, broadly, I think the thing I always say is that there's so much more to course selection than the professor and the class. For myself, I have a major that gave me a lot of flexibility in choosing courses, and that was both such a blessing and such a curse. Um, I had so much flexibility in choosing what time I wanted to have my first class, what time I wanted to have my last class, which topics I wanted to front load, which courses I wanted to take in my sophomore year versus my senior year. I'm entering my last year of college, and I already know that the seventh semester is not going to be when I take my one mandatory math class, so I've already kind of dug myself into a hole in this last semester. But I would really take the time beyond what you hear people say, looking at sites like Rate My Professor, or looking at grading averages, or looking at um all of these really, really objective factors, is, consider what you want out of a class in things like size, in things like the professor's background, in things like timing. What kind of person are you more likely to take this class with when it's at 8 a.m. versus 2 p.m.? Think about how you want your social life to function. Are you an early riser? Are you a late um night owl? Would you like to work a job that might require you be in office 9 to 5 on Tuesday? These are all very valid considerations that don't make academic any less of a priority. That's just something that you consider through. So I really always highly suggest to folks that they really consider every aspect of their life and how every nuance of course selection involves in it. And a separate piece of advice bouncing off of Allison's is that a lot of really, really talented people teach at these schools, and I think you should very much tap into not only their curriculum but their expertise and network outside of the classroom. These are people who have some sort of vested interest in making sure you have some sort of success, and then they will work to do that fairly effortlessly. To you, what seems like a big ask through a cold email is just a text to their friend who works at the New York Times. To you, what is a massive commitment to doing a coffee chat is, having a conversation on their Thursday lunch break. There are so many ways to reach out and create connections within your classes, whether you like the classes or not, in order to expand and complicate on your college experience as much as possible. And as Allison said, there's nothing wrong with taking a few fun classes here or there. There's nothing wrong with taking a class because you really love the work of the professor, and there's nothing wrong with taking a class because you think that they're going to bring in some interesting guests. So have at it in your course selection. Have make it as joyous and thoughtful a process as you can.
是的，打开心胸很不一样诶，真的。Ariana 呢，选课上有什么想法？
Biggest takeaway from this first year was to be flexible about your schedule. The summer before my freshman year, I spent hours and hours poring over my class roster, all my degree requirements, trying to plan out the perfect 4-year plan. But things definitely did not go according to plan. With like class selection, a lot of the times you won't get the classes you want, or you won't get the time you want. So yeah, just be open to um, doing classes out of order, or trying maybe different classes than your like top choice. Always have backups for your classes. Just yeah, find other classes that you are just even slightly interested in. I think for my major, a lot of the classes are only offered fall semester or spring semester, so that's something you definitely want to take note of, and consider. Another smaller detail that's kind of boring, but I feel like it's pretty important, is noting where your classes are going to be, and just make sure you have enough time to get to class. And also make sure you have that lunch break. You definitely want enough time to walk to the dining halls, wait in line if you need to get the food you actually want to eat, and then walk back to class. So these are smaller details that are kind of mundane, but they will definitely make your first year a better experience.
Yeah, the last thing I want to add about courses is that I don't know how it is at every university, but at Berkeley, we have a lot of quote like alternative course options. So this semester, I took a 1 unit class that was just like directed group study on the cognitive science major. And what they would do is every week they would, for it was like an hour a week, and it was a 1 unit class. And every week they would bring in somebody who had some sort of cognitive science or research background. And the entire course was just about the different careers that you could have in cognitive science, whether that's like AI ML or like child development research. Like that was really helpful for me. I also took a 2 unit decal, which is short for like I think, democratic learning at Cal, which are like student-led courses typically taught by a junior or a senior or a grad student. And mine was in data visualization. So I learned how to use like the R coding language, I guess, but there's so many different ones you can take. There's ones on Photoshop, there's ones on like playing the xylophone. And if you're looking for like, a skill to add on your resume or just something to like enrich your life, definitely look into like alternative course options that typically open up after traditional like course enrollment. So yeah.
是很实用的一个建议哦。我想除了选课之外，社团还有活动也是大家都很关心的。你们都参加哪一些社团跟活动呢？
So yeah, in terms of student organizations, I was involved in a lot of different things. I was in student government the first couple months I was on campus. I rushed a sorority and then dropped it. I think at a school like Berkeley, a lot of the emphasis is on student pre-professional organizations. And I think the reason that this is unique from most universities is that at most big public state schools, Greek life is like the function of social life that you have. So like that's what you imagine your primary social life to be. But at Berkeley, UCLA, a couple other schools I've heard, your pre-professional organization makes up the bulk of your social life. You get like the yacht parties, the date parties, the trips, and also the professional experience. So personally, I am in a educational technology consulting organization, and what we do is we work with companies such as Adobe, Microsoft, Google to kind of do different research projects for them, whether that's like user research or marketing campaigns. I am also in a undergraduate marketing association. So that's another one where we have a year-long client and we do some sort of brand campaign for them. And I was also in a business journalism organization. I would like to say at this point that I am not a business major whatsoever. These are just kind of things that I stumbled into. But I really do think that it is worthwhile to join because most of the education that I've received at Berkeley has been out of these organizations, whether that's the peer mentorship from people who are in the club will help you clean up your resume and like help you with your interviews, or whether that's like the genuine pre-professional experience you can get putting like a Fortune 500 on your resume before you've even worked a real job. I think these organizations are definitely, just a very big factor of my education, and I have learned a lot out of them. So I know we're going to talk more about them later, but that's just my personal commitments.
很棒很棒的
I
分享。
Yeah, I definitely agree with Allison and the capabilities of these organizations and the power that they have. But I also do want to contrast and emphasize that, any organization is and can be and will be a very massively valuable organization for you, not only socially, but also professionally. And I'll get to that in a sec. But I think the most important thing, especially in the context of first years, is to just do and try as many things as you want with the knowledge that there is no organization that is too weird, small, or niche. At these places, this is where you find people finally, that might finally share your common interests that you didn't have in your hometown. This is where you can meet like-minded people or people from similar cultural backgrounds. Whether you join a coffee club or you join a foreign association or you join literally a run club. These are all things that you are able that can add an aspect of socialization and interest to your life. And as a first year in those few weeks, the best practice is to go to as many of those introduction meetings as you can. To really put yourself out there to many faces, because even if you visit 4 clubs and neither of those are your fit, the other person who also visited all 4 of those clubs might just become your best friend for the next 4 years. So, it is a really important ritual and process to, visit as many of these places as you can, because, and then also fundamentally, if these are good clubs, then they will be clubs that can be accommodating, whether you attend every single day of your life or once a month, that they will have room for you and space for you no matter your capacity outside of these clubs. Now looking down the barrel into, year 2, 3, and 4, all of these clubs can turn into things that become valuable on a resume. Whether you become the treasurer of the coffee club or you become, a junior associate at your at the accounting society. These are all things with, like, no matter the role and no matter the club, and if you put your dedication into it, you will learn such valuable soft and hard skills that employers look for, whether that's team management, leadership, or spreadsheets or budget balancing. All of these clubs are basically each companies with applicable valuable skills to be learned from, no matter how trivial or weird that they might look on first touch.
非常有道理。而 Yana 呢？
Pre-professional organizations are also the most popular. Everyone comes in trying to think about how they can get into certain organizations, but definitely look into some more fun ones as well. We have stuff where they work on radios together, or maybe they like grow and eat their own mushrooms. So there's lots of fun things that you could check out. One of my favorite experiences this year was being part of band, because through that I was able to meet people of all grades, from like undergrad to like grad students and people studying all sorts of different majors. I feel like in my classes, a lot of the times people around me were all trying to do the same thing, all had the same career goals. But through a more like arts or like culture-based organization, you're able to meet people with slightly different goals, and you can definitely experience some new things through that, and also learn from them as well. And yeah, during your first week there or your first month, definitely don't try to like limit yourselves to certain organizations. You don't have to like go to them all the time super consistently, but try to visit different clubs, visit your friends' clubs, just put yourself out there and try new things.
听起来也都很棒。我想你们都参加很多活动哦，然后大学的课业应该也蛮繁重的，在时间上你们怎么来运用管理呢？
Yeah, I can talk about this one. I was in a pretty tough situation last semester where I had taken a 20 unit course load, which is more than the recommended amount, but I had a phase where I wanted to graduate early and it was like a whole thing. And then I was also an active member of three on-campus organizations, which is I think also more than they would recommend you to be active in. And I was also working a job. And at that point, I think it really just came down to just being really honest with the people who you're reporting to. Like there were times where I would tell my boss, like, hey, I really want to turn this assignment around for you, but I'm involved in all these campus organizations. We have a big presentation coming up. Is there like I might not be as responsive on email, but I'll check Slack very often. Or if I'm speaking to somebody on campus, I'll be like, hey, like it's midterm season. I have a lot of like exams and assignments coming up. Would it be all right if I like push some of the project stuff here? I think the biggest advice I've received on time management is regardless of the grace periods and the leeway that you need, do not become a black box. And what I mean is do not feel so overwhelmed and feeling like you have to handle everything yourself that you stop communicating with people and just keep trying to chase deadlines. Because as someone who's, been on that project management side, as somebody who's like, worked multiple jobs and like been under multiple sets of management, everybody will almost always factor in, your need for extensions and when they're setting their deadlines, and they will always be receptive to communication. At the end of the day, everybody is like living their own life. Everybody, is a student at a big school. Everybody is also probably trying to work to survive. And like people understand that you have commitments. And I think knowing that you can rely on your community, that you can trust that the people you're working for care about your well-being has really helped me with time management. I think that's not really like a time management answer, more of like a how to get forgiveness answer. But at least in my experience, that's been really helpful.
呀，非常有帮助。
Yeah, I think time management is a really difficult thing to, actualize because it feels like one day you're trying, and something just works. For me, I guess it was realizing that a lot of the tools at my disposal, whether it's like calendars or notebooks or lists, like things could really, really help me, that I could relieve myself of a lot of the memory work. I guess time management becomes a game of effort management very quickly when you become busy with things. And I think that that is when you realize that not everything can have your 100%. Sometimes if you are working a job in a club and have assignments going on, one of these things needs to take a hit and you must decide which one it is. You are in university to go to school, your job is paying you. Sometimes the organization takes the backbone, or sometimes it's a particularly busy season at school, but a very chill season at work, so you can really take advantage of that. But I definitely agree that honesty is such an important factor, but also honesty with yourself is such an important factor on understanding what your load is. You only have 24 hours in a day and you have to eat and sleep. Those are the things that must, stick around. And so, I think time management begins with understanding your priorities, which things, and being honest with how long things take you, being honest with when you're going to wake up, when you're going to sleep. So I think that is a very good first step to managing your time. And once again, when it comes to the very literal management of your time, try as many things as possible. Some people, a very, very rigorous use of productivity software will get you there. For some people, a sticky note on your laptop every day will really, really set you in. So it really depends. Try everything you've heard from your friends, and eventually one of these things will stick around for you.
嗯，是的，是的。而 Yana 呢，在时间管理上有什么建议？
I think it's really important to know what environment makes you the most productive. For some people, they really like to study with people. They feel like it's good to have someone to hold them accountable, and that's when they can really focus. But for some other people, they cannot study around people at all. They won't be able to focus and they'll end up like goofing off or talking to people. So yeah, you really need to know yourself and know what environment is best. Besides that, yeah, like Benny said, definitely know what your priorities are. I think that's the most important. You make time for the things that matter to you. So, yeah, make sure that you have your priorities planned in first, and then everything else will fall in place.
嗯，谢谢，非常好的建议。刚刚你们也有提到打工，我不知道你们是不是都有打工的一些经验，或是听过朋友的一些打工的经验，可以分享一下吗？
Yeah, so going to school in the Bay Area, San Francisco is right by us, and there's like a huge startup ecosystem. And I think one of the best decisions I made in college, which Benny actually suggested to me, like my first week of school, was to get a job. I know everybody's like family situation is different, everybody's interests are different, so this looks different for everybody. For some people, it might just be like on-campus employment, and that's like working. For some people, it's like research labs and things of that nature. The first job I ever had was at a social media startup, and they paid me, a small but not insignificant amount of money for a college student. And I think with that amount of money, I was able to travel and visit my friends who were going to college in different states. I was able to say yes to more people who wanted to go to dinner or go to new restaurants or even visit a museum in San Francisco. So I think like getting that first job to me kind of felt like a moment of growing up. Even though my parents are very supportive of me, I can now have more flexibility in like going out and doing the things that I wanted. And after you get that first title on your resume, I think it's pretty easy for that to just spiral into like a different job that you get every semester. And also leveraging, like Benny said, like the professors and the connections in your community. Like there are a lot of ways for students to get employed. Even just like cold messaging on LinkedIn, being a student is such a powerful thing. Like I wish I had kind of learned this sooner now going into junior year, but firing off an email or a message to somebody being like, I am a student at this university. I would love to learn from you. I would love to work under you. People have a lot of grace and a lot of, just like hope for like mentoring young people who want to do the things that they want to do. So if you have the bandwidth, I would definitely recommend getting just like a job, any job. That goes into what I was talking about a little bit earlier about just like finding out what you like and what you don't like. Like I learned very quickly, I don't love working in social media, but I'm very interested in ed tech. And like, the corporate world is like one thing, but the startup ecosystem is like another. And like it's just another way to help you figure out where it is that you want to go. And it also gives you a lot of freedom and independence and opens up a lot of opportunities for you socially, professionally, even academically. So I would really recommend it. Thank you, Benny, for telling me to mass drop my resume as a freshman.
哇，真棒，Benny。
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it is very much a blessing to have a job because, of just all the things that it offers you. But, sort of speaking on a college job as a necessity, whether that is out of financial necessity or, it's contingent on a scholarship or anything on that. And I think that there are a lot of jobs out there that are very flexible to fit into your life. Jobs are necessarily the one thing that you can choose. Obviously, it's a very tough market out there, and it's a very tough world out there. But it can feel very opaque. But it is something that you fundamentally do have control over. So, on that first step, I would very much recommend seeking out as much advice as you can, seeking out advice from your college's career center, which every single one has one, and every single one is underutilized. I would seek out, if you don't know what a resume looks like, ask your older peers, ask your parents, ask your professors, even. These are all people who have been through this experience and know what they're looking for. Truly the people at your college's career center are in the, have your interest in their best minds. And so I definitely recommend seeking those sorts of resources out. In terms of jobs, I always joke that the only consistent aspect of my life since I got to college was my job that I started freshman year, which sees me working at a dormitory resource center. It's a very chill job. I log packages, I assist with lockouts. It's very, very cool. You know what I mean? I work for 3 hours. Of those hours, probably half an hour is going to the job. Everything else, I'm doing homework. I'm reading. I'm it's practically me time. So there's as a college employee, people understand that that is exactly what you are, an employee with priorities in college and university with things to do that might supersede this job. And I would definitely absolutely take advantage of that fact when searching for a job, but also when working that job. Understand that your employers will have a lot of grace for you. Understand that the people reading your resume will have a lot of grace for you, and pick a thing that really really fits in your life if that is something that really does interest you. There are more possibilities than you think when it comes to the college job. Apply for anything that looks even mildly interesting. And if you think you're underqualified, apply anyways. You're competing against a bunch of people who, have scant work experience at best. So as long as you are putting your foot into that door, that is all you can do. And that is a blessing in that way.
是很棒。Ariana 呢？
My first year, but I had a lot of friends that were working around on campus. In a college town, so our options are pretty limited. You're basically employed by the school. That's like your one option, or you're working in one of the restaurants downtown. Yeah, like Benny said, go for any job that remotely interests you. You never know what one job could lead to in the future. There are lots of options. So whether you want to work in your dorm as like an RA, maybe your second year on, or maybe you want to work in the cafes that often gives you like free food for like leftovers. Or maybe you want to work in the Cornell store. So there's lots of different options. Talk to your upperclassmen. I'm sure they'll know all the nice jobs where you don't have to do too much work, but you're still getting paid. Yeah, make use of your network.
听起来你们大学生活都非常非常的精彩。不过我也蛮好奇的，有没有什么是你们觉得后悔，如果重新来过，不会这么做的？
I think, covering a bunch of topics, I definitely would have been kinder to myself and also a plethora of people in my life, whether that's, my being more gracious to my roommate or being more extroverted to my professors. But yeah, I definitely think that offering yourself a lot more grace in the process of figuring things out is really important. A lot of people interpret the idea of maybe not having a stellar first semester academically, or not finding a job, or not finding an immediate social circle to be really damaging. And there was a lot of those things that I really, walking out of even just my first semester, I was like, oh, that is, I failed in this regard necessarily. But I think if I were to go back, I would have definitely given myself more grace in that process of exploration and understanding that, just because your friend over there has a great friend group or what looks like a great friend group, great academics, and a great work-life balance, it doesn't mean that that is your path or your destiny, but also B, maybe their life isn't all that it seems. So I definitely think that one of the number one things that everybody should give themselves, and I certainly wish I gave myself, was just a little bit more kindness in those moments.
Ariana 和 Allison 有什么后悔的？
I don't know if this is a distinct regret or just something that I kind of look back on and wonder about, but I'm somebody who doesn't really love to plan. And I'd say that as an individual, I'm also like relatively like frugal. Like I try to be like smart about my money. But if I could go back and do things differently, I think everybody talks about how like they wish they would have been more intentional about their course selection or like joined more clubs. I think on those fronts, there are organizations I wish I could have joined or classes I wish I would have taken if, I had more time in my schedule. But I think, moreover, seeking out experiences, especially experiences that are maybe uncomfortable or require more effort, I would have loved to be a little bit better at. For example, I really want now to go abroad because I'm realizing that there are very few opportunities you'll have in life where you'll have like a fully financed chance to go live in a foreign country. And now that's something I'm looking at doing senior year, which is typically a year that people like to spend on campus. I also think being a little bit more intentional about like my breaks and the time I have at home, like for example, now that I know kind of how to plan a trip or how to book a flight, like these were things that were very intimidating to me. You know, I had never booked my own flights before, like a couple summers ago. And now it's like, well, if I had just like made the effort to learn how to plan something out, I could have gotten my friends together, you know, now that we were all working, et cetera, and been like, oh, like, you know, let's visit Chicago, let's go to Hawaii, things of that nature. Of course, these are things you learn as you grow a little bit older, you know, like you work more, you travel more, you take more courses, and you always look back and there's something you wish you could have done. But I feel like taking that initiative, being the one to make the plans, being the one to find the restaurant and making a reservation and inviting people, there's just so much to experience in college. And you'll never miss money, I think, but you will always miss the time that you could have had to get closer to people. You'll always miss the time you could have had to travel and see the world. And I think that that's something I wish I would have internalized sooner.
Ariana 呢？
I was more willing to talk to new people at first. I think going to college, knew that I would be meeting a lot of new people, but I didn't realize how cool it would be to actually get to know people from all walks of life. There's people from all corners of the world, and it's really such an awesome experience. I just wish I wasn't so intimidated of going up to people. Yeah, put yourself out there, go to all the events, even like reaching out to like grad students and professors. Don't be intimidated by like the experiences they have. Yeah, they are super knowledgeable. They've done a lot of amazing work, but don't be afraid to talk to them. A lot of them are just they're just people like you and they have like similar interests as well. So don't be afraid to go up to them and you never know where that relationship might take you in the future.
嗯，是的，是的。那今天在节目的最后，是不是请你们都分享一下，你觉得在大学里面你做的最对的决定是什么？
But one of the better things that I did for myself, especially in its first few, months, weeks and months, but also just continuously throughout my college career, is I was constantly going outside. Any excuse I would have, I was going outside. I very rarely missed class, not because I really loved class, but because I could not stay inside. I joined all these clubs that were very active and put me on my feet simply because I could not stay in my dorm. And I think that is such a blessing to just be outside in the world. I think that there is so many other places that is not your bed and your desk, and obviously those are valuable moments that you should take. You should sleep and you should study and you should take time for yourself whenever you need it. But as much as you can, push yourself to be around people, push yourselves to be around things, push yourselves to be around places where new people could walk in and opportunity could walk through the door, because there is the least amount of opportunity in the world for you is your own room. Everywhere else in the world, something could happen. In your room, nothing will happen. So I was really, really happy with myself that I just always continually kept going out there to find something to do, even if it sometimes was literally walking from one end of Manhattan to the other. That was something, and I don't regret doing that. So really keep pushing yourself to find something to do, no matter what it is.
I I think I mentioned before, I was between a school on the East Coast and Berkeley, which I think when you grow up in the Bay Area, you think of Berkeley as very limiting in a way. You know, you imagine like, okay, it's a bunch of like electrical engineering majors doing their data science homework. And like that's kind of what it feels like, at least in my mental imagination, to go to Berkeley. But the reason that I ended up choosing that school is because I knew it was a big school. And I knew that at 18, there was a lot that I didn't know. I kind of had a vague idea of the major that I wanted, the classes I wanted to take, the job that I wanted to have, but I was very aware of the fact that that's just what I think because I grew up in the Bay Area, because I've had a limited range of experiences, and I don't think any choice has ever served me better. I think choosing the school that maybe felt a little bit safer, that was in state and close to home, and like had all of these like, associations with it, like the stereotypes that you hear. I think broadly, most of the negative things I've heard about college and university are very untrue. And there's a lot of things that you can do to have a very vibrant experience. And to that point, I think getting to college, staying open-minded about the people I was spending my time with, the organizations that I was joining. Like, I think the organization that has had the biggest impact on my life was the Educational Technology Consulting Club that I mentioned that I was a part of. And, going into Berkeley, I had wanted to study English. I wanted to be a teacher, and like business and tech had very little to do with me. But it was like the first week of school, and my friend who was very involved in like startups and technology and wants to do that for a career said, "Hey, like I saw this club. I know you're not interested in business and consulting, but I know you're interested in teaching, you're interested in education, and they work on ed tech products, for example, like Chegg or Quizlet, things that students use." And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go and meet people, see what it is that I don't know. And it was because I kind of joined that organization that I realized there's so much to education, in research and child development and like the products that are being used in classroom. And that's kind of given me a lot of love for my cognitive science major. So I feel like just being open to the fact that your college experience might not be what you think it's going to be, that there's a lot of stereotypes associated with anything that you can join. But as long as you keep trying to figure out what you'll like and what you don't like, you will definitely get where you need to go. It was the same with my first job. Like I was working for like a European social media messaging platform, which like again, very little to do with me, but that kind of PR and like social media content creation experience led me to have this job that I absolutely adored, which was working in PR for an ed tech product that I thought was super, super cool. So again, just knowing that there's a lot that you don't know about this world, and that even the things you kind of have an idea of, you're not really going to know until you go and try it. So I don't know if this is like one thing that I feel like I did right, but just continuing to find those right things. And you might not know it until you're already in it, but you're not going to know unless you put yourself out there and try.
非常好，非常好。Ariana 呢？
Mentioned earlier that you just want to try things so that you know if you'll actually like it. And I think that was the best decision I made. So my first semester, I decided to take a digital product design class kind of out of the blue. I ran into someone at a club fair and they mentioned they really enjoyed it. So I was like, maybe I'll try this out. I ended up really liking it. So I came into college wanting to concentrate in data science, but now I'm adding another concentration in UX design. And I've been designing for a project team on campus as well. So you really never know what kind of opportunities college will bring you. Take advantage of anything that seems remotely interesting, and you never know where that's going to take you.
是的，是的，今天非常谢谢三位大学生再次给我们非常多很宝贵的经验跟分享，谢谢你们，也谢谢观众朋友们的收看。有朋来访不亦乐乎，我们下期节目再见。有朋来访不亦乐乎。